Welcome to the RevRoom. I'm your host, Rachel Bryant. Join me each episode as we discuss the strategies of top marketing practitioners, uncovering the tactics that transform ideas into revenue. Whether you're a seasoned marketer or an aspiring leader, the RevRoom is your go-to source for actionable advice and industry trends. So grab a coffee, get comfy, and enjoy this episode. Hey everyone, we've been talking about it. The old marketing playbook is dead, but what's taking its place? At Inverta, we believe the answer lies in building genuine relationships with your audience through hyper-relevant content that helps them be better at their jobs, not just telling them how great your company is. Today's guest knows this transformation firsthand. Lindsay Tjepkema is a brand strategist, growth advisor, and former VC-backed founder who's worked with brands like IBM, LinkedIn, and Salesforce. She's developed the BRAVE framework, that's B-R-A-V-E, the BRAVE framework for strategic decision-making that helps businesses at every level, from CMO to individual contributor, make choices that build trust and drive revenue. We'll explore how female leadership brings essential empathy to marketing, why brand is the foundation of all revenue growth, and most importantly, what you can control today to make a meaningful impact, even in times of constant change. So let's dive into making brave marketing decisions with Lindsay Tjepkema. Hey there, welcome everybody back to the RevRoom podcast. We're really excited about our guest today. Lindsay Tjepkema. I got it.
Done.
Tjepkema, thank you, is with us, and she's here to talk about her BRAVE framework. And we want to apply that obviously to marketers and how we can build our not just our corporate brands, but our personal brands as we get more bold about the way we build our marketing programs, as we tie that back to the new marketing playbook and some of the things we need to do. We need to be bold in what we take to our leadership and start to develop and be creative in our actions as marketers. So we're excited to have Lindsay here. Lindsay's got a plethora of experience in her background as a founder and a CEO and now a great thought leader. So Lindsay, would love to have you introduce yourself to the audience and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, you already did such a great job with
Oh.
that. What else can I tell you? Yes, lots and lots and lots of years in marketing, building a lot of brands, generating a lot of growth through human connection. And I'm excited to share all that and kind of how that's all culminated in this thinking brave thing that I'm talking a lot about now. So
awesome. I love that. Well, as we always like to do with our guests at the RevRoom, we ask you to bring your favorite drinking vessel and or mug. We like to say mug because I'm a coffee person, but not everybody's a coffee person. So I brought one of mine today, and I brought my Wall Drug from South Dakota mug.
Oh.
So I love getting mugs when we go on vacation. So I
Mhm.
typically come home with at least one. And stickers we're collecting now too for our garage fridge. You know,
Right.
everybody's in the Midwest is the garage fridge is totally a thing.
It's a
I don't know
thing.
if
It's
that's true
absolutely a
everywhere
thing.
else. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I do have a Wall Drug sticker too. But yes, this is my Wall Drug mug.
Nice. Mine is
so,
my Actually I Can mug, which actually inspired a show that I ended up doing that I'm doing now, which is all about your Actually I Can moments. So as a founder and as a leader in particular, the times where either the world tells you or your own brain tells you that you can't do something or you shouldn't do something, and the lessons you learn when you do it anyway. So that's my trusty mug.
Love that.
Come on.
Yeah, that's a great reminder every day, right?
Every single day. Yeah.
Yes, you can.
Actually,
yeah.
Mhm.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Well, let's get into our discussion a little bit. And Lindsay, you've had an impressive career from leadership, marketing leadership to a founder. And now you're kind of a brand strategist and developing some of these thought leadership things. And tell us a little bit about that thread that sort of connects all of those things together.
Oh, humans, relationships. It's the same common thread that connects literally everything in our lives. It's the people we know, how we know them and how they know us. And that's true for our lives. It's true for startups. It's true for enterprise. No matter what tech or advancement or innovation or macroeconomic, political, crazy, anything, no matter what's happening, good, bad, or otherwise, relationships are the foundation, and relationships for businesses really starts with brand.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I love that. I'm a big believer in building relationships. It's one of the reasons I think I've been fairly successful in my career in different ways. I try to build unique relationships with everyone that I'm
Yeah.
with, and unique is not probably the right word. Genuine,
Mhm.
relationships with people, and I think that goes a long way to long-lasting relationships, and building trust and favor with people, right? So
100%.
they,
Mhm.
yeah, they believe you when you say something. So that's great. So as a female founder, we're a female-founded company here at Inverta. And you've, done the same. So, yeah. As a female founder, like, how has your perspective shaped, your approach to marketing and brand building?
Um, that's I could talk about it all day, but on the other hand, I'm not sure because I've never not been a female doing the things that I'm doing.
Sure.
However, again, I'm going to sound like a broken record, somewhat intentionally a lot in this conversation. Relationships. I think when when you have any um, headwinds, when you have anyone kind of questioning, even completely subconsciously, whether or not you belong somewhere, or what makes you different, or what makes you special, or um, questioning kind of like what are you going to do here? It's literally what you said, which is, genuine relationships so that people know me and trust me and hopefully like me and know what I stand for, so that when I say, here's what I think we're going to do, here's the vision that I have, here's what I know to be true, here's what's happening in the market, here's what my experience has taught me. It's you come to those conversations with all the people behind you who know, like, and trust you. And that stands for a lot. And that's absolutely been my experience as a
Mhm.
founder, as a female founder, as a female leader, is your network and the reputation that precedes you matters so much, as
Yeah.
you're trying to take on big things and make your dreams reality.
Yeah, I think as a leader, that authenticity, right, is so important, and, that comes with, honesty and owning your mistakes even,
Mhm.
like, so much in our world, especially as females in the business world, we tend to think we have to sort of be perfect,
Yeah.
and, no one is, and so for us to own those mistakes, and even in a genuine, authentic female way, right, that is really important,
Yeah.
and I think that's even important in building relationships with, our male coworkers
Yes.
as well, because 'cause they're wired differently
Yeah.
potentially than we are, and, building those connections, being our authentic self in
Right.
that is really important.
Well, and so much of what I end up talking about a lot, LinkedIn, and I work one on one with a lot of female founders, to bring into the open the fact that the playbooks that were written for founders, the advice that is given for founders, is 9 times out of 10 not made for female in any other way underrepresented founders. It's
Yeah.
and that's okay. Like, there's a lot of founders
Mhm.
that it is for, and that's okay. But I think that calling it out into the open and saying like that advice isn't really for me, and so finding people. That's what I try to be for a lot of people. Finding coaches and mentors and guides and content and channels and podcasts that speak to the differences and the nuances that you have as a founder who's different than what most people expect when they hear the word founder.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good.
Mhm.
Um, so let's transition a little bit about to like brand as a foundation. It's something you really like to talk about. And you often say that what you said to me, brand isn't just logos and colors, right? It's about building relationships at scale, is what we've been talking about. So expand on that a little bit, and what does that mean, sort of in practical terms?
Yeah. So if you just clear your mind for a second and think about a business, right? Maybe it's the one you're working in. Maybe it's one that you bought something from earlier today. Who are they? Who are they?
Mm.
What are they to you? What do you do? What are you even doing here? What is it? Why do they exist? That's all brand. Like anything we talk about with demand, go-to-market strategies, what you feed into your AI, your large language model, your custom GPT, how your salespeople show up in conversations, how your customer success team represents your business in customer interactions, all of those things, all of them start
Wow.
with brand, all of them.
Yes. Yeah.
And whether you want to admit it or not, they do. And so if you're not intentional about it, that brand still exists. It just exists in whatever way it manifests in that moment, which means that you end up with something that's really diluted, disjointed, confusing, lacks the meaning that it could. And at the end of the day, at the bare minimum, does not reach the potential that it could. Conversely, if you're really intentional and really strategic and really thoughtful and hopefully human-centric in what that brand experience is across all those different touch points, that's when you end up with the truly legendary, iconic brands that people want to be a part of, that they know, like, and trust long term. So brand is everything. Brand is literally the foundation of everything.
Yeah. Yeah. So many B2B marketers sort of think of brand as kind of a naughty four-letter word, maybe, And I think what you're saying is it doesn't matter who you're selling to, you're still selling to people. And people buy from brands that they feel good about. And to your point, that brand can extend to just the touch points they have with individuals inside the organization and not the logos, the website, the commercials, et cetera,
Mhm.
right? So it's really important that that brand sort of as a term sort of is a common thread throughout the organization.
Yep.
What do you think about like as a B2B marketer? Like, if I'm sort of going, brand, if I'm not in brand marketing, right? Like if I'm a demand person or something, I'm like, I don't really want to think about brand. Like, how do you think that's limiting effectiveness of our demand generation programs?
So good question. First of all, taking it back like just one step, I think a lot of the conversations that are being had, and it's interesting because I had another conversation this morning with somebody who was like, "Brand is back, right?" And it was like
Mm,
because it was leading into another podcast, and we were talking about how brand is back, and I'm like, it's in, it's out, it's cool, it's not. But also in this moment, there have been a lot of conversations about it has no value, brand is a cost center, brand is fluffy, we've bloated our investment in brand in the past, like, and I those conversations could not be more damaging
mm,
because, and I've seen it as a marketer, I have seen it as a sales leader, I've led sales teams, I've seen it as CEO, I've seen it from every angle. There are already enough um, mistaken perceptions that brand is all of those things. That it's a waste, it's a cost center, it's fluffy, um, it's overvalued. And when we have conversations about how that validate that, it's really dangerous because to answer your question, when we have those conversations and we make it okay and we validate these mistaken thoughts that brand doesn't have this value, then you end up with demand gen programs and investments in marketing that are overly focused on what I think has been deemed, performance marketing.
mm.
All has a place, but it's part of the machine. It is not the machine.
Yeah.
And they end up
Yes.
being things that follow playbooks and look for growth hacks and look for tech stacks that are going to have the answer and look for formulas from other companies because you try to take a recipe and apply
Hmm.
that to brand and your entire customer experience and your sales life cycle and your pipeline development. And that ends up lacking substance. And
Yes.
then people don't know, like, and trust you. They don't believe what you say. They don't know what you stand for. In a increasingly more and more commoditized world, it's a race to the bottom because then the only thing that differentiates you is getting, cheaper or faster. So
Yes.
it's so not just that I'm fired up about brand because I know what it can do. I'm also really, really concerned about these extremely potentially harmful conversations about that are mistaken about the value of brand. And when we take it away, that's when you see companies that may make mistakes that they might not be able to even come back from.
Mhm. Yeah, I think what you said there is really interesting, and it kind of reminds me of just this sort of robotic, go-to-market
Yeah.
motion that we've been seeing over the last probably 10 to 15 years,
Yeah.
and we here at Inverta kind of call it the old playbook, right? And it's a very, like, put out piece of content, form fill, put them in the SDR sequence. Whoever converts sort of moves down the pipeline. Well,
Right.
buyers don't buy like that. Like, we
No.
all know that this is not working,
Right.
It doesn't work
We
like
don't do
that
that
anymore. We
ourselves.
don't buy like
Right.
exactly. You and I don't buy like that.
No.
You don't buy like that. I don't care if we're buying big tech software for, buying a pair of shoes. Like,
Right.
it doesn't matter. We don't buy like that. And so that brand portion of it, we've talked to Kerry Cunningham at Sixth Sense about his research around the buyer's journey, and we know that the research that a company is doing, and not just research that we've all known that they're doing, but they're building affinity to a particular, vendor before they even talk to anybody,
Yes.
right? Like, they're doing their research, they're out there, so, like, hiding things behind, form fills of content, and, like,
Right.
not thinking about your brand, and not putting your thought leadership out there, and, like, your brand is also the people who stand on stage and talk about, the problems in your industry and those
Yes.
sorts of things, right? So, I
Have
think that's really
conversations on
important.
podcasts. Yeah.
Yes, exactly, and I think that, to your point, like, I don't the pendulum shouldn't swing too, like, we don't wanna over-rotate back to something, and away from thinking about the whole buyer's journey, and, like, all of those, all in the way we can read signals and, like, things like that, but, like, we also have to think about what is happening in the market that we don't control, for one, but also, two, is it happening in, like, sort of the dark space, on the Reddit channels, in G2, those sorts of things that we don't have control over. So it is important that and I go back to people, like,
Mhm.
and I'll let you sort of talk too, but, like, the people in your organization have to carry that brand, because it carries over to your customers who talk about you in those dark corners.
100%. And one of the conversations and one of like the common responses I see to, well, whose responsibility is it to care about brand and how do we do this? One of the responses is it's on the shoulders of marketers to make sure that they're to manage upward and to make the CEO and the investors and the board members, like anyone above you, care about brand. That's a
Mhm.
very easy response. It's a very convenient response um,
Yeah.
because it feels good to say it, but it's wrong. Because
Mm.
whether you are a marketing manager or a CMO, if you go into a room with the CFO or somebody who controls the budget and say brand matters, they're going to say, "Show me proof. Show me proof from other businesses. Show me proof of what you've done in the past." They're going to ask for ROI. Like we've all been in these conversations.
Sure.
Whereas if the CEO or the board or the investors or the CFO takes it upon themselves to educate themselves and talk to their peers about how they're seeing, like, hey, fellow CEOs, other founders, other CFOs, hey, C-suite peers, like, how are we seeing brands matter in our, like, among our competitors, in our space, in our vertical? Those are the conversations that need to be had so that then that it's not on that marketer or that marketing leader to come in and say, "Hey, brand matters." Um, it has to come from the top, and so and I'm
Mm.
just really passionate about that too. Like, it has to. Leaders have got to have conversations among themselves to say, like, where do we stand on brand? How does this show up? How can we get stronger? What do we need to do? What percentage of our budget should go toward brand? What does that look
Yeah.
like? So
Yeah.
I'm hopeful that more of those
Yes.
conversations will happen.
Yeah. That's great. Well, I want to transition and talk a little bit about your Brave framework. So, can you walk us through that? And what does it stand for? And I would love to hear a little too about, like, how did you come up with this? Where did it come from? What was the genesis of it?
Sure, it's actually perfect timing because we spent a lot of time talking about brand. Um, it's the answer to and therefore. So there are so many conversations. I have a lot of them about does brand matter? Where does brand stand? Like organizationally, strategically, brand. Then the next conversation that's had all the time is, well, okay, how does one create a strong brand? There are lots of conversations about that. And then there's this little space that's like, how does one stay aligned with your brand? How does one, like, how does a company become legendary in alignment with their brand? And I don't think a lot of people are talking about that because there's so much conversation about how to make a great brand and whether or not you should. Then what? So you've done all the work. How do you stay in alignment with it? How do you actually drive growth of a business that's in alignment with who you say you are and who you want to be and how you want to be known, liked, and trusted? So that's what Thinking Brave does. Is it's a decision. It helps you approach decision making. It's a mindset to go into challenges, opportunities, and decisions and come out the other side being like, I don't know, maybe this isn't the best thing that we should do, or knowing that it's something worth pursuing. And it's Thinking Brave. Brave stands for brand, relationships, audacity, values, and energy. And it's basically asking yourself, as you're approaching a decision, should we hire this person? Should we pursue this campaign? Should we go down this path? Asking yourself questions about each of those 5 things. And if you give yourself all yeses, then, okay, then this is something that's worth investing time, money, and resources in, which are super valuable and if very scarce, just about every business. And if you get a no in any one of those areas, you've got to take a pause and fix it before you move forward. So in a high level, that's what that is.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. Which element of Brave do you see that companies struggle with the most? And what are some of the consequences that you see through that?
Okay. So really quickly, like if you skip over, for example, brand, which one could say, how would we do that? But that looks like, I always say it's like a perfume commercial where you've seen a perfume commercial where it's like there's a movie star and there's like snakes and there's like a sunset on a beach and it's very weird and ethereal and you don't even know what it is until you're like, oh, perfume commercial, that makes sense. When you skip over brand, you end up with a campaign that's like that. And people are like, it might be audacious, it might be really cool, maybe it has someone famous, gets a lot of attention, but people don't actually end up connecting that effort with your brand, which is dangerous. So I see that a lot. I also see values skipped over a lot. And what that looks like very similarly is chasing the hot trend, appealing to the masses, and trying to do something that will be hot and cool and attention grabbing, but it's not in alignment with who you are and what you stand for. Maybe it's adopting AI in a really, really, really big way, but your company is super duper human centric and very analog and people centered. And it just feels like a miss and it's confusing for your audience.
Yeah. I would think that values one gets passed over a lot too when, especially as we've been through some economic downturn and maybe business slows a little bit. And so you start to, the values piece sort of goes to the side in order to try to just react and win, like just go win some business. We just, whatever it is. And so then maybe you set aside your values of like, hey, maybe that's not the best type of customer for us. Or, we're not treating our employees the way we intend to because we're trying to, the revenue is struggling, the bottom line is struggling, those sorts of things.
100%. Yes, exactly. And it's social media. We'll see people showing up kind of weird on social media and that doesn't align with, who they are or developing products that just don't feel right. That when you skip it over. And a lot of times people don't even know what their values are. Or they're not just something that goes up on your wall. Hold them down and actually make decisions with them in mind.
Yeah, that's great advice. Share with us maybe an example or two of some companies that you have seen that have embraced that model, the Brave framework, and what they've seen results wise.
Okay, so the example that I always like to give is Salesforce, which did not know that they were Thinking Brave. Thinking Brave is something I came up with. Salesforce doesn't know what it is, but they're a really great example of it because some people notice, some people actually don't fully realize it, but Salesforce came up with SaaS. Like, they introduced all of us to SaaS. It was a crazy idea. Before Salesforce, everything was on a CD disk or a floppy disk back in the day.
Yeah.
And they introduced this wild and crazy thing called cloud, and nobody knew what it was, and everybody was freaked out. So their marketing team could have been like, look, we're completely overwhelmed. Like, this is really confusing. And they could have led with features, which is what we see really often when a marketing team gets stumped, is like, we don't have any idea what's happening. The button is red. Like, would you like a red button? But instead they thought long term. So this is brave in action. They thought long term about how they wanted their brand to be positioned. And they thought that far ahead, that they were like, hey, this is where Salesforce is going to live in your life and in your organization forever. They, relationships, they got really, really intentional about the relationships that they wanted to build with people that they wanted to know, like, and trust them long term. They knew who they were for, they knew who they weren't, and they knew them really, really well. They were audacious. So they introduced the world to the cloud, which, again, if you rewind yourself 20 years, no one knew what that was. And they did it anyway. Like, they didn't play it safe. Their values, one of their values is helping customers succeed. And so they got so far inside the heads of who their customers are that they introduced solutions that their customers didn't even know that they needed. And then energy. Again, they didn't allow themselves to get stumped by a marketing challenge. They chased positive energy to a winning solution, and it became part of how they made decisions over and over and over. Like, how do we think audaciously? How do we put our customers first? How do we position ourselves for long-term growth? And to me, that's a really perfect example of thinking brave, because it's not one big grand gesture. It's decisions over and over and over again that are in alignment with who you ultimately want to become, not what's going to be a quick win right now.
That's a great example. One that we can all relate to, for sure. Let's pivot a little bit from companies and using brave and talk a little bit more about, if I'm an individual and I'm listening to this conversation, I'm like, okay, that's all great and whatever, but like, I'm an individual contributor on my team. How do I apply brave to my everyday, life?
Right.
And I know we talked a little bit about thinking through, like, focusing on controlling what you can control today, is one of the things I know you talk about. So can you just talk a little bit about, like, how as an individual can I utilize this framework, in my everyday?
Yes. So we're not all Mark Benioff. Like, we're thank goodness for that. But we all make decisions every single day. And I have found myself, like, part of how I came up with Thinking Brave is that I thought about how I've made decisions and over the last 20 years professionally, and then I came up with it, and then I used it personally as I've been building my own business. So I get it. Like, we're not all making these huge, huge, pivotal, crazy business decisions every day, but we are making hundreds of decisions every day. And so whether you are putting together a quarterly strategy, creating paid ads, recording a podcast, as you make a decision today, right now, keep that in mind and ask yourself, like, about those 5 things. And I can, like, link to like a little card that I have that can help you do that. But you think about your own positioning. Like, is this thing that I'm going to do going to get me ultimately closer to the how I want to be positioned, the people that I need to know, like, and trust me long term, my values and what I stand for, or what the business stands for, audacity and holding space for creativity, and feeling good and positive about this thing I'm doing. Like, it's getting into that mindset regardless of what you're working on. You're drafting a LinkedIn post, or you're writing a keynote, like, whatever it is, it gets you out of that, frankly, that scarcity mindset of, like, oh my gosh, I have to do this thing that's going to deliver results right now. And it helps you think bigger about the role that you play in the bigger picture, and how that, even no matter how small that decision might be that you're making in that moment, how seemingly small, how it has the power to keep you on track, or get you on track to get you to where you want to be. And I can share the, I don't know if we talked about this before, but, like, this airplane, this my son, is in flight lessons. He's like obsessed
Oh.
with flying. And he told me one day, hey, Mom, so there's this plane that takes off from San Francisco and it's flying to Washington, D.C. If that plane, when it takes off, is off course by just 1 degree, just one, by the time it's like, I think it's 100 yards off, like from takeoff, it'll be like 6 feet off course. No big deal. By the time it gets over LA, it'll be off course by 5 miles. Seemingly, you're like, okay, that seems fixable. But ultimately, that plane will land in Baltimore, not Washington, D.C.
Yeah, that's a bit of a difference.
1 degree. Yeah. Land safely, especially now. I think that I would be very thankful that it landed safely. Baltimore is lovely, but it's not Washington, D.C. And so, point being, we all make 1 degree decisions hundreds of times a day. And those decisions have the opportunity to get us to where we hope to go and to help us to reach our full potential, or to throw us off course, no matter how small they are. And that's for us personally, for us in our careers, and absolutely for the businesses that we work for.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. How old is your son?
He was 13 when he told me that. He just turned 14.
Okay, he's a wise one. All right, keep him.
He's an old. I like him.
Yeah, that's great. And flying already, that's fantastic. I think one of the things that we definitely, as marketers and people in the business world, have experienced a lot of is change, especially over the last probably 5 years, especially, but 8 years or so. It's been pretty dynamic in the amount of change that one thing's constant, it's change. And I have a husband who's just his unit was just acquired, so he's like trying to figure all that out. Like it happens all the time, and like I'm sure there's ways to apply the Brave framework to that, but to those sorts of like things that are out of your control. But I also wonder about, people have a fear of like trying new things too. And sometimes it's not even a recognized fear. It's just like, hey, they get comfortable in the things that they're doing. And how do you think about that as a, like, in guiding people? And like, sometimes it's actually more harmful to stay doing what you're doing than it is to try new things.
Yeah,
Right?
no, I 100%. So one of the letters in Brave is A, which is audacity. And if you skip that, that's exactly what you get. You get something that is feels safe, but is actually boring and unforgettable, and is forgettable, not unforgettable. And it happens because, understandably, we're afraid. And there's a whole lot of fear. There's a whole lot of scarcity. I think you said dynamic, which I think is a very kind way of saying how crazy things have been. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
It's been a scary, uncertain, shaky place in marketing and in business and in the world.
Yeah.
And so it can feel safe to do something that feels proven or, status quo.
Yeah.
And I get it that it can be scary to put super, super valuable time, money, resources, budget behind something that's not proven. But like, I can tell you right now that shipping something that is safe and that is boring and that is unforgettable, to me, that's even scarier. Like putting something out into the world, putting valuable resources behind something that I know before I publish or send or ship it or approve it is not going to work, at least not the way that I hope it could.
Yes.
That's, to me, that's scary. Whereas putting the same money, time, resources behind something that is a little risky and is audacious, and it could be the difference maker to like get you out of that place that you're in. And audacity alone is reckless, but audacity that is aligned with long-term vision of your brand, the relationships with people that you want to know, like, and trust you long-term, your values, and actually thinking about the energy of the people that are involved. That's when audacity is a catalyst for reaching, like, to get you to where you really ultimately can and want to go.
Yeah. I'm sure this isn't purposeful, because it is the word brave. But the A in brave and that audacity piece is sandwiched between those other things that you just said, and so that importance of all of that combined, right, is crucial.
Mhm.
But it's putting all 5 of those things together
Yep.
and not having 1 or 2 stand alone,
They
that
have to
is
work.
really impactful.
They have to work together. That's a
Yeah.
100, like, that's if you skim through this and you somehow, like, wanna try it anyway, the biggest takeaway is, like, don't you have it's all of it. It's all of it or just ignore it all. Like, it's all or nothing
Yeah.
because those 5 things have to work together. Without any one of them, you miss, and
Yeah.
you might as well not try to go for it unless you
Yeah.
go for it in its entirety.
I think what you said about sort of taking the safe route and, like, shipping something that you inherently and, like, in your gut know probably isn't gonna work
Mhm.
or will not have the results that you desire, right? I mean, maybe it might work in a certain way, but, I think as marketers, and I work with marketers every day who are doing this, and I think inherently we know what we've been doing is not going to continue to work.
Mhm.
Yet we continue to sort of package things up and do it the same way because it's just the churn,
Yeah.
right? Like, I gotta get it out the door. I gotta get it out the door. I gotta drive pipeline. Gotta drive pipeline. It's like, I know you gotta drive pipeline, but like, are you driving pipeline? Like,
Right.
that's the real question at the end of it, And it's so hard to get out of that, just that sort of that hamster wheel of activity because the top is, your
Yeah.
CMO, your CEO is sort of asking all those questions, and then the team is going, "We gotta be busy, we gotta be busy, I gotta have my job," and,
Mhm.
all of a sudden and you wanna bring value, but at the end of the day, like, you have to think about strategically, of course, but, like, what are those audacious things that we can go try that are different?
Yeah.
I think what you're saying is, like, "Hey, don't rip all of it out and, like, go do audacious," but,
Right.
like, maybe we pilot audacious,
Yeah.
Something like
Yeah,
that.
and again, it's not you asked before about, like, yeah, but what if you're not, like, the CEO of some big company? Like,
Yeah.
well, cool. Like, think brave. Like, go back through this, download the thing, think brave on literally tomorrow's LinkedIn post
Mm,
or the, the paid ad that you're putting together, design. Like little
yeah.
things, and how you're going to show up in the meeting tomorrow. It's
Mhm.
little things. Don't go, all right, gonna do the quarterly plan for, next quarter. It's gonna be all about thinking brave. We're gonna be audacious all over the place. Like, it doesn't have to be that way. It's start with decisions that you're making right now
Mhm.
and ask yourself, like, and actually sometimes when I'm working with teams on this, I ask them to go back to think about something that didn't work. Let's all think about something that didn't work. Um, and they'll be like, "Oh, remember that campaign last year, blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, "Okay, let's go through it." And we ultimately end up pinpointing at least, one thing that was absent. Like, they weren't audacious, tried
Yeah.
to play it too safe, or what, really wasn't in alignment with our values. And it's like, cool. Okay, so how can we do that differently moving forward? And
Mhm.
I just say start there. Just start there.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are good tips because as an individual contributor, you can do sort of small things along the way,
Mhm.
right? And, yeah, bringing that full framework to bear. So,
Yeah.
well, that's awesome. So, um, Lindsay, just to sort of wrap up, if what's the sort of one actionable tip? You've given a lot of, sort of advice here, but like what's one actionable tip if I'm listening today that I could go just start doing immediately?
Okay. So I already talked about thinking brave. So I'm not going to go back to
Yep.
that because I guess you should do that. Start there.
Mm,
But kind of going back to where you and I started, relationships. So
mm,
we're all super, 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 super busy. We're all being asked to do more with less. Things are really scary. I get it. So start with relationships. Like, go ask some people in your like professional friend network. Just check in
mm.
and virtually, in person, just build relationships, and nothing bad will come of it. Only good can come from furthering your relationships.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great advice. All right. So tell our audience a little bit about how they can find out more about Brave and about Lindsay and what you're doing. Yeah, where can they find you? And what are the things that are coming up that you've got
Okay.
coming up that you're doing?
So you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm super active there. Find myself having conversations like these all the time on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
And then also at lindsaytjepkema.com or Human Brands Win. My name is very difficult, so they both take you to the same place. humanbrandswin.com. And then I also have a show called Actually I Can, in alignment with the mug. And if this whole Thinking Brave thing gets you interested and you'd like to learn more, reach out. I do workshops, I do coaching, I do one-to-one work, I do work with teams to help them build strategies that help them to think brave and to really reach their ultimate breakthroughs. So that's me.
That's great. Well, in the show notes, we'll include links to all of the things that you referenced. Your LinkedIn profile will be there as well. And I do appreciate how open and brave you are in what you do there. So thank you for joining the podcast. We really enjoyed it.
Thanks so much. It's fun to be here.
Thanks for tuning in to the RevRoom today. We hope you enjoyed this episode. For more, be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. Don't forget to follow Inverta on LinkedIn for more updates and exclusive content. That's Inverta, INVERTA. Have a question or a topic you'd like us to cover? Reach out and let us know. Until next time, keep innovating and driving that revenue growth. See you next time.